My daughter-in-law, Chloe, breezed into the kitchen while I was making my morning coffee and dropped the bomb without even looking me in the eye. "Harper and Sloan are moving in with us today," she announced casually, inspecting the nails on her left hand. "Their leases are up, so they'll be crashing here for a bit. Rent-free, obviously, just until they get back on their feet." The hot water stopped dripping into the coffee filter. I stared at my steaming mug for a second, letting the words sink in. This was my house. A 3-bedroom home paid off in full after decades of hard work alongside my late husband. My 30-year-old son Caleb and Chloe had moved in temporarily a year ago to save money. They didn't pay rent, they didn't chip in for groceries or utilities, and up until that moment I had kept my mouth shut out of love for my son. Caleb was standing by the fridge. He kept his eyes glued to the floor, rubbing the back of his neck, his go-to move whenever he wanted to avoid conflict. "And where exactly are they supposed to sleep?" I asked, keeping my tone perfectly neutral as I dried my hands on a dish towel. Chloe sighed, looking at me like she was explaining simple math to a toddler. "Well, they have a ton of stuff. It makes the most sense for them to take your room since it has the master bath. Caleb and I will just stay in ours. You hardly spend any time in your bedroom anyway. You can just sleep on the living room couch. It's super comfy." I was being rearranged like a piece of old furniture. In my own home. They fully expected me, a 65-year-old woman, to give up my bed to 2 absolute strangers, just so I wouldn't inconvenience my daughter-in-law's social life, all while my son didn't say a single word to defend me. Right then, something inside me just clicked. There was no sudden rage, no tears, just a cold, absolute clarity. "All right," I replied, flashing a calm, easy smile. Chloe's face instantly lit up. "Oh my gosh, you are the best. I knew you'd get it. It's gonna be like a permanent sleepover. Anyway, I'm heading out to brunch with the girls to celebrate. We'll start bringing their boxes over this afternoon." She practically skipped out the front door, leaving a trail of heavy floral perfume in her wake. Caleb mumbled a quick, "Thanks, Mom," and scurried out right behind her. I stood alone in the kitchen, listening to the heavy silence of my house. Then I picked up my cell phone. My first call was to an emergency locksmith. My second was to a same-day moving company. The locksmith arrived in less than 20 minutes. He was an older guy who worked quickly and quietly. While he was swapping out the deadbolts on the front and back doors, the mover's box truck pulled up to my curb. 3 guys walked in carrying heavy-duty cardboard boxes and massive rolls of bubble wrap. "Just the bedroom at the end of the hall and the toiletries in the guest bathroom," I instructed, pointing the way. "None of my things. Just their clothes, shoes, the gaming console, and the makeup." They worked with incredible efficiency. I shadowed them the whole time, making sure that every bottle of Chloe's expensive perfume, every one of Caleb's jackets, and every stray phone charger in the living room was carefully packed away. I didn't break a single thing. I didn't throw anything in the trash. My goal wasn't revenge or destruction. It was a deep clean. I was clearing the clutter out of my life. While they packed, I opened my laptop and rented a climate-controlled storage unit about 3 miles down the road. I paid for 3 months up front with my credit card. I wanted 0 loose ends, and I certainly wasn't going to give them any room to claim I had stolen their belongings. By 1 p.m., my house was entirely scrubbed of their presence. The movers locked up the back of the truck, handed me a detailed inventory list, and took the instructions for the storage facility along with the padlock key they'd need to secure the unit. When the truck finally disappeared around the corner, I grabbed a clear plastic document sleeve. Inside, I slid the spare key to the storage padlock, the paid-in-full receipt, the facility's exact address, and a copy of the inventory. Using packing tape, I stuck the envelope directly to the glass of my front door, right at eye level. The house finally took a breath. I put on my rubber gloves, filled a bucket with warm water and pine oil soap, and started scrubbing the floors. The lingering smell of Caleb's overpowering cologne vanished, replaced by the crisp, clean scent of polished wood. I poured myself a glass of ice water and sat down at the dining room table, basking in the afternoon sun streaming through the window. At exactly 4:15 p.m., my phone buzzed against the wood. It was the first text from Caleb. The clock had started ticking. "Mom, the key won't turn. Did you lock the deadbolt from the inside?" I didn't reply. I just placed my phone face down on the oak table and went back to the mystery novel I'd started the week before. 10 minutes later, the phone started vibrating nonstop. Calls from Caleb. Calls from Chloe. Then the text messages turned frantic. "Helen, open the door. We're outside with Harper and Sloan and all their suitcases." What is this envelope on the door? What storage unit? This isn't funny. Mom, open up right now. I took my time getting up, brewed myself a cup of chamomile tea, and peeked through the slit in the living room blinds. The scene outside was exactly what I'd pictured. Chloe was red in the face with indignation, stomping the heel of her boot into my porch. Harper and Sloan were holding a couple of cardboard boxes, glancing at each other in total confusion. Caleb was staring at the storage receipt, his eyes wide with panic. Chloe snatched the paper out of his hands, pointed aggressively at the house, and screamed something muffled through the glass. I watched Caleb pull out his phone again. My phone buzzed in my pocket. This time, I swiped to answer. "Hello," I said, my voice smooth and relaxed. "Mom, what kind of crazy stunt is this?" Caleb yelled, his voice actually trembling. "You changed the locks. Where is all our stuff? Your things and your wife's things have been professionally packed and moved to a climate-controlled storage unit. I personally paid for 3 months of rent, so you'll have plenty of time to find a new place. The address and the key are right there in your hand. You can't just throw us out on the street. We live here!" Chloe shrieked clearly, having ripped the phone away from my son. "I live here," I corrected her. "You were guests. Guests who decided to move 2 extra people in without paying a dime, and then ordered me to sleep on the couch in the home I built with my own hands. I am simply declining your new terms of living together." "You're leaving us homeless!" Chloe screamed. "You have 3 months of paid storage and a car. I'm sure that you and your friends can put your heads together and come up with a creative solution. Have a great night." I hung up. I turned off the doorbell chime and turned up the volume on the TV. That night, I slept in my own bed, stretching my legs all the way out across the mattress, without having to listen to heavy footsteps pacing the hallway. The next morning started with an incredible, unfamiliar sense of peace. I made my breakfast, slowly savoring my toast with a drizzle of olive oil. Then I booted up my computer. If Caleb and Chloe thought my boundary setting ended at the front door, they were dead wrong. Caleb had been an authorized user on one of my secondary bank accounts since he was in college. The excuse had always been just for emergencies. But over the last year, Chloe's emergencies apparently included nice dinners, out online shopping sprees, and a handful of streaming subscriptions. I had let it slide to keep the peace. Not anymore. I logged into my banking portal and transferred every single dollar over to my primary checking account, where I was the sole owner. Then I permanently blocked the 2 credit cards issued in their names. The whole thing took less than 5 minutes. The rush of taking back total control of my finances felt even better than my morning coffee. Around 11 a.m., my younger sister texted me. "Helen, what on earth happened with Caleb? Chloe just called me in tears saying you completely lost your mind and threw them out on the street without any of their stuff." I didn't bother typing out a long defensive essay. I just opened my text thread with Chloe, took a screenshot of her message from the day before, the one that literally said, "We're taking your room, you sleep on the couch, the girls arrived today," and sent it to my sister. She decided there was no room for me in my own house, I texted back. I safely packed their things in a paid storage unit. They're perfectly fine. My sister didn't reply. That sweet family silence was my first real victory of the day. Right at noon, my phone rang again. It was Caleb. "Mom," he said, his voice sounding defeated and incredibly small. "We went to the grocery store to get some food and the card was declined. Did you cancel the accounts?" That money is my pension and my hard-earned savings. "Caleb," I replied casually, straightening up a stack of magazines on the coffee table. "You are a married independent adult, and you've got 2 roommates for extra support. It's time you guys start paying for your own lunches." "Please, Mom, we don't have any cash on us." "Well, I certainly hope you enjoyed yesterday's brunch," I said right before I ended the call. 2 days went by. The house felt like my sanctuary again. I rearranged my houseplants, dusted the window frames, and finally brought out the embroidered throw pillows that Chloe had deemed tacky and banished to the closet. I was out back watering the garden when the security camera app chimed on my phone. I checked the screen. It wasn't Caleb or Chloe. It was Harper and Sloane, the 2 friends. They were standing on my front porch, arms crossed, looking fiercely entitled. I walked down the hall and pressed the intercom button from inside. "Can I help you?" I asked. Sloane leaned in close to the little microphone. "Mrs. Helen, we need to talk to you. We already broke our lease because Chloe promised us we could live here. Now we're stuck sleeping in a sketchy, cheap motel. You need to let us in. It's totally messed up what you did to us." I actually smiled at the sheer audacity. They fully expected me, the woman they were perfectly happy to banish to the couch to fix their logistical nightmare. "I never signed a lease with you ladies," I said. "The person who made you that promise doesn't own this property. I highly suggest you take your motel bill up with Chloe." "That is so incredibly selfish of you," Harper yelled, glaring into the camera lens. "Chloe told us you had tons of extra space and didn't even use half the house. Open the door." I stepped away from the intercom. I walked over to the control panel for the front yard sprinkler system, a heavy-duty setup my husband had installed years ago. I turned the dial straight to the zone that covered the main walkway and the front porch. Watching the camera feed, I saw the pop-up sprinkler heads emerge from the grass and unleash a high-pressure blast of freezing cold water straight onto the girls' faux leather boots and designer jeans. Sloane shrieked and jumped backward, while Harper desperately tried to shield herself with her purse. They both sprinted toward the street, absolutely soaked and cursing up a storm. I twisted the dial back to off. Then I walked back out to my sunny backyard and went right back to watering my geraniums. Nobody else rang the doorbell that afternoon. On the morning of the 4th day, I looked out the living room window and saw Caleb trudging up the sidewalk alone. His hands were shoved deep in his coat pockets, his shoulders totally slumped. When he rang the bell, I didn't bother with the intercom. I opened the door, but I kept the heavy chain lock firmly in place. We looked at each other through the 4-inch gap. He looked exhausted, with dark bags under his eyes. "Hey, Mom," he mumbled. "Hello, Caleb. Can you take the chain off? It's freezing out here." "The chain stays exactly where it is," I said, holding his gaze. "What do you need?" He let out a heavy sigh and leaned his forehead against the wooden doorframe. "Mom Chloe is absolutely livid. Her friends completely cut her off because of the motel disaster. We had to take out a payday loan just to cover the deposit on a tiny, crappy apartment, and now we're completely broke. I just need to know why you went so nuclear on us. We could have just talked about it." There was nothing to talk about. I reminded him, my voice low but unwavering. "Your wife informed me that 2 strangers were taking over my bedroom and that I'd be sleeping on the couch. And you stood there dead silent, staring at your shoes. You let them treat me like an unwanted burden in my own home." I just didn't know what to say. You know how Chloe gets. She has a really strong personality. I figured you'd just go along with it to keep the peace. Well, you figured wrong. Your silence was your answer. You chose to live by your wife's rules, so now you get to deal with the reality of them. I am not going to subsidize your marriage by paying your way through life, and I am certainly not going to surrender my dignity to do it. I turned away for just a second, grabbed a small cardboard box I'd prepped earlier and passed it through the gap in the door. He took it clumsily. Inside were his childhood photo albums and his dad's old watch things. I didn't have the heart to send off to a random storage unit. Your father would be heartbroken to see you let someone disrespect his home like that, I told him, looking him straight in the eyes. Take care of yourself, Caleb. I shut the door softly and slid the deadbolt into place. I didn't wait around to hear his footsteps fading down the driveway. Later that afternoon, I stood staring at the massive three-seater couch dominating my living room. It was huge, upholstered in a dark, heavy fabric, and hand-picked by Chloe months ago using a credit card that I paid the bill for. It was the exact same couch she had decided I would be sleeping on. I grabbed my phone, snapped a couple of well-lit photos, and threw it up on a local neighborhood marketplace group. I listed it for a ridiculously cheap price, $75. Practically new couch. Selling dirt cheap due to a sudden remodel. First come, first served. Must pick up today, I wrote in the description. Within an hour, a young couple rolled up in a pickup truck, absolutely thrilled by the bargain. I helped them prop open the double patio doors so they could haul it out without scratching the drywall. When the guy handed me the $75 in crisp bills, it felt like I was exorcising the very last ghost of Chloe's presence from my home. I took that exact cash and drove straight to a local furniture boutique. I picked out a beautiful single-seater armchair upholstered in a deep olive green, complete with a matching ottoman. It was the ultimate reading chair. It was designed for exactly one person. Nobody else could possibly crash on it. It was the absolute perfect symbol for my reclaimed space. Just as I was angling the new chair perfectly by the window, my phone chimed with a long email. The sender was Chloe. The subject line read, "I'm sorry, it was a huge misunderstanding." I skimmed the first few lines. It was a masterpiece of playing the victim. She claimed her comment about the couch was just a badly phrased joke, that I had completely overreacted because of my unresolved loneliness, and that she would be totally willing to forgive me if I just helped them out with their new security deposit. I actually laughed out loud. I didn't even bother hitting reply to tell her absolutely not. I just flagged the email as spam and deleted it. True indifference stings a lot worse than an argument, and I wasn't about to give her another second of my energy. The weekend brought a fresh wave of pressure this time from Chloe's side of the family. Her mother, a woman I had maybe spoken to twice at weddings and baptisms, somehow got my number and added me to a massive group text titled Family United. Almost instantly, the messages started rolling in. Helen, it is incredibly tacky to leave the kids stranded without support. You need to be a little more understanding. Chloe loves you like a mother. Family is supposed to help each other out, not throw each other out on the street. I sat in my new olive green armchair, sipping a fresh cup of coffee, reading every single text. Chloe had clearly spun a wild narrative where she was the helpless victim of a wicked, unhinged mother-in-law. Instead of getting worked up or typing out paragraphs defending my character, I just did what worked best. I dropped the receipts. First, I uploaded the screenshot of Chloe's original text, the one where she gleefully laid out her plan for her friends to live rent-free while I took the couch. Then I uploaded a second picture, a clear photo of the paid-in-full storage unit receipt, showing the 3 months I'd covered. I typed one single message below the images. I am returning your daughter to you. She is a fully grown adult, and her belongings are safely secured. Since you are all so passionate about family support, I am confident you'll gladly open your doors and give up your master bedroom for her rent-free. Best wishes. I hit send. Then I permanently left the group chat, blocked Chloe's mother's number, and toggled my settings to mute notifications from unknown contacts. I walked into the kitchen and looked out the window. It was a gorgeous, clear day. I spotted my next-door neighbor, a sweet older guy named Mr. Henderson, carefully pruning his rose bushes. He looked up and gave me a friendly wave, and I waved right back. The quiet, boring routine of my life was completely mine again. I absolutely refused to let outside noise ruin the peace I had fought so hard to get back. 3 weeks slipped by, and the profound silence in the house simply became my new normal. One morning, I found a plain envelope in my mailbox containing a $250 check and a handwritten note from Caleb. Mom, I picked up a second job to help cover rent at our new place. I know this doesn't even come close to what you spent on us, but I want to start making things right. I'm sorry. I stared at the paper. It was the first time I'd seen him take genuine accountability in years. No excuses. No manipulative pleas to move back in. I tucked the check into a desk drawer without depositing it. I didn't need the money, but he desperately needed to feel the weight of his own consequences. I sent him a brief text. Got the letter. It's a good first step. Take care of yourself and work hard. I didn't invite him over for dinner. The boundaries I had laid down were made of steel, and I wasn't going to bend them out of a fleeting sense of maternal guilt. The umbilical cord had finally been cut, not with scissors, but with a brand new deadbolt and a flat refusal to be disrespected. Winter rolled in gently. My home was exactly the way I wanted it, with Caleb and Chloe's old bedroom transformed into a sun-drenched reading and sewing room. After hosting my book club one Friday night, I shut the front door, listening to the deadbolt slide into place with a firm, satisfying click. There were no heavy boots stomping upstairs, no sink full of dirty dishes waiting for me. I'd heard through the grapevine that Chloe and her friends had a massive falling out, and that she was now aggressively budgeting and clipping coupons just to get by. I felt no pity nor any real joy, just absolute indifference. My life belonged to me again. I had taken back my authority simply by remembering exactly who I was and whose name was on the deed. I am not a cruel woman, but I absolutely refuse to be an invisible one. I headed up the stairs and slipped under the heavy duvet of my massive, perfectly made bed. I listened to the pure silence of my home. It was the sound of victory, the unbreakable certainty that I would never, ever have to sleep on a couch again.